Hello, boys and girls. This is your Peter Pan storyteller. When you hear this sound, turn the page. Now let's begin our story on the title page. Fred Flintstone, the Magician. Story by Horace J. Elias. A Peter Pan narrated book and record. Wilma Flintstone asked her husband Fred, who was busy reading the Bedrock Bulletin,
"What goes on in that lodge of yours, the secret society of loyal snellygasters?"
Wilma, for the 900th time, it's a secret. That's why it's called the Secret Society.
Well then, what's a snellygaster?
Fred got a wicked twinkle in his eye and said,
A snellygaster, Well, I shouldn't tell you, but it flies like a bird, only backwards. It has a nose like an airplane propeller and a head like a lion. And it has very sharp claws, lives in old bowling alleys, and nobody's ever seen one.
My goodness, why not?
Because it's invisible.
Heavens, whatever does it eat?
It eats wives who ask too darn many questions,
roared Fred, as he slammed down the newspaper and stomped out of the house. Next evening, when Fred came home from his job at the rock mine, he said to Wilma,
Guess what? The Snellygasters are having their annual show, and I'm going to do an act in it.
What kind of an act?
asked Wilma.
I'm going to be the Great Flintstone and his magic tricks. Will you help me get it ready?
This time, Wilma got a wicked twinkle in her eye.
Certainly, dear. What tricks are you going to do?
Oh, I'll pull a rabbit out of a hat, make a cane turn into flowers, and make a dollar bill disappear. Then I'll get all handcuffed and tied up and get into a trunk with ropes around it. And then I'll escape. How about it? Sounds great, huh?
Wilma asked,
Is Barney Rubble going to do an act too?
Yes, he's going to do his silly trampoline act, but he'll be so bad nobody will applaud him,
answered Fred. Next morning, bright and early, Wilma talked to Betty Rubble on the rockaphone. They both decided to teach their husbands a lesson, because neither Fred nor Barney would ever tell Wilma or Betty what went on at the meetings of the Secret Society of Loyal Snellygasters. On the night of the show, Fred's act was just before Barney's. Fred began with his rabbit trick. He reached in to pull the rabbit out of the hat, but he pulled out a dead fish instead, said Fred, as the audience roared with laughter instead of applauding. Then, when he tried to make a stick turn into a bunch of roses, it turned into an old pair of floppy pajamas.
Wait till I catch that Barney,
groaned Fred.
He did this. I'll get him.
Next, the dollar bill, instead of disappearing, turned into change for a dollar.
Oh, brother,
said Fred to himself.
I guess I'll just have to be a big success when I get all tied and handcuffed and then escape from the trunk.
So Fred let himself be handcuffed and tied, and he hopped into the trunk, which was locked, and roped and chained. Then the trunk was slid into position, and a sort of tent was put over it. But a minute later, when the tent was pulled up high over the stage and out of sight, Fred was not out of the trunk. Instead, the whole trunk was gone, and the audience clapped like crazy. They thought it was supposed to happen that way. By this time, Barney's trampoline was ready, and he started bouncing, higher and higher. What he didn't know was that his wife had stretched the trampoline so tight, he was bouncing all the way to the top of the stage, higher and higher, until he was bouncing right out of sight. In the meantime, someone let Fred out of the trunk under the stage, and he went looking for Barney. When he saw him bouncing like that, Fred climbed to the top of the stage, hung on to a rope, and made a grab for Barney the next time he came sailing up. But Barney grabbed the rope too. Then Fred missed and fell down onto the trampoline and bounced up again. Barney saw him coming and let go of his rope, and he went down just as Fred came up. And there they were, going up and down, passing each other in the air like two yo-yos, with Fred yelling at Barney and Barney yelling for help. When everything had quieted down and someone else had won first prize, Wilma snuggled up to Fred and said,
Fred, honey, tell me, what does a snellygaster really eat?
Fred got that twinkle in his eye again.
Oh, I was just kidding about them eating wives. Snellygasters really live on chocolate, goldfish, and gasoline.
Fred Flintstone, you stop that. You tell me the truth now.
That is the truth,
Joked Fred.
How do you think a snellygaster can fly without gasoline for its engine?
And Pebbles said,
Dada cuckoo.
which meant,
I must be the only baby girl in the world with two silly parents.